We have Red Sea chaos, Signal Gate with the Trump administration's bombing of Yemen. We also have consumer confidence at a 12-year low in the United States. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has been hinting, as well as many banks have been hinting at recession. So has Donald Trump. This is what he has said.
Are you worried about a recession? Maria Bartiromo asked you, and you kind of hesitated.
I'll tell you what, of course you hesitate. Who knows? All I know is this. We're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch. We're going to have jobs. We're going to have open factories. It's going to be great, and the plane is landing. And thank you for a lot of good questions, okay? Thank you.
So that was Donald Trump on the possibility of a recession. The tariffs have played a huge role in this. Professor Wolff, what is going on here? Is it accelerating the U.S. empire's decline, or is this a way to stave it off?
Well, it is a hope to stave it off. I think it's a sad hope. I don't think the chances are very good. The chance is not zero, but then again, a lot of things we would have to say don't have a chance of zero, even if they're very, very small. But let me get to the heart of your question. Let me begin with the tariffs. The tariff is a tax. It is a tax that a country puts on goods and services that are produced outside the country, but that come into the country where they are finally sold and consumed by whoever buys them. So what you're doing is applying a tax when an externally produced good or service crosses your border into your country. Tariffs are hundreds and hundreds of years old. There's nothing new. There's nothing original. There's nothing exceptional about a country applying tariffs. Therefore, there's an immense literature in every decent library full of books and articles that explain how tariffs work, what their goals are, and a good literature examining when they did and when they didn't achieve the goals that were set for them. So we know all of that. And here's the simple conclusion of all that literature, which I, as a professor of economics all my life, have had to teach to generations of students. Number one, you don't know when you impose a tariff what its results will be. You know, it's a little bit like raising an interest rate or changing the value of your currency or any other kind of important economic change. It can go this way or it can go that way, and it depends on the context and the other things going on, what the effect of a tariff or any of these other things will be. So when you hear either Mr. Trump or any of his economic advisors telling you we're putting on a tariff because it's going to have this particular result, my politest way of responding is you'd be better off talking to somebody else, because this is a person who is telling you something they cannot know. Okay, now let's be concrete about what is going on in the U.S. right now. Mr. Trump, in order to look like he's the big, powerful leader who's going to bring us, just like your clip said, riches beyond imagination and all the rest of that kind of talk, he is levying tariffs on our neighbors to the north and south, Mexico and Canada, on our European, I was about to say allies, but that's not so clear anymore, and on all the dirty 15 and all the rest that are being talked about. And that's going to mean that if you buy something from Canada or Mexico or Europe or any of the others that have a tariff, you're going to have to pay more money. You're going to have to buy the object and pay whatever it costs, plus the tariff, which is a tax imposed by the United States on these goods and services coming in, which will be charged to you, the buyer, and that money you pay will go to Uncle Sam. So, for example, you'll have to pay $20,000 for a motor scooter made in Italy, say, and if it's got a tariff, an additional, I don't know, $1,000, $5,000, depends how high they set the tariff, that'll go to Uncle Sam. So you'll be out more money. Now, let's take a look at that. Right there, before we take another step, here's the logic. A tariff will raise the prices of the goods that are affected by the tariff. If we're not going to bring in avocados from Mexico, because that's where most of them come from, without a tariff now, if we're going to put a tariff on them, that's the threat. Well, then your avocado, however you eat it, is going to cost you more. Long story short, it's going to worsen the inflation. Wow, that's serious. Do we know in advance that that's going to happen? No, it could be offset by something else. If, for example, the cost of oil and gas were to collapse and we were to suddenly go back to $2 a gallon to fill our car at the same time that we impose tariffs, then the one would offset the other and there might not be an inflation. Is that possible? Yeah. Is it likely that oil and gas prices are going to collapse? No. Which means it's probably going to be inflationary. And I could go on and on and on. But there is something about the tariff program of Mr. Trump where we can know in advance what the result is. And here's the one example. If you impose a tariff, but you leave the impression on people that the tariff might not last that long, that the tariff might be raised or lowered in the near or even medium future, then you are doing something very dangerous. Why am I telling you this? Because Mr. Trump has been doing that. He's imposed a tariff, then he's taken it away. He's imposed a large one. Then he said he's going to do instead a small one. It's not clear if they're going to last for a few months or a few years or indefinitely. That is important for the simple following reason. Every large corporation that either does business abroad, which is most large American corporations do that, or even if it doesn't, but it depends on buying things from abroad or selling things from abroad and so on, they have to calculate, should we invest, for example, if we're doing well in a new factory? If you're doing well, hopefully, this is the kind of question your executives face. But now with Mr. Trump, here's what's happening. They're not investing because they can't decide where. Two of the largest Japanese companies that make automobiles, I won't mention their names, but you all know them, have just informed the Mexican government that the plans they had told them they were going to build more Japanese automobile factories in Mexico. There already are a bunch. Almost every automobile company does something in Mexico. But they just announced they're not making the investment for the time being. They may in the future, but they're holding back. Why? Because they know it makes no sense for them to invest in a car company in Mexico on the hope that they could sell those cars in the United States without paying a tariff, because there isn't one now, and there hasn't been one between the United States and Mexico for many years. Now they don't know. They don't know where to put it. Maybe they should build it in Texas. Maybe they should build it in a third country. Maybe they should stay home in Japan, build it there, and ship. Here's what's happened. many companies have already announced very clearly, because they have no reason to hide it, that because of the uncertainty within which the whole tariff conversation is discussed, they're holding back. And the way capitalism works, if the corporate sector holds back investment, means it's not hiring the workers it might otherwise have hired. It's not buying the goods and services it would have had to buy if it had made the investment. And so suddenly the demand for people, the demand for goods and services falls down, and we get what's called a recession. That's why you hear all the talk of recession now. The fault and the blame goes first to the corporate executives who make the decision to invest or not, here or there. You know, we are all, let's remember, we are all held hostage. If you live in a capitalist system, we are all held hostage for our jobs, our incomes, and everything else by the decision of the tiny minority of top executives who make all the investment choices that we have to live with. And what Mr. Trump, his fault is that he's making life so uncertain for them, forget about us, for them, that they're reacting in the way they normally do. And so all of us are wondering whether we're going to have a recession and how badly it's going to affect you, me, your family, my family, our town, your community, and so on.
I'm sure you've seen the headlines about consumer confidence. It's at a 12-year low. Donald Trump's foreign policy, and I'm curious if you could integrate your analysis of the empire here, because Donald Trump's foreign policy has not been experiencing a recession. There's bombs over Yemen, there's the signal gate, but recently also a move escalating tariffs on Venezuela, imposing a 25% tariff on anybody trading with Venezuela in oil. This particularly targets China. Talk about what is really a crisis for ordinary people. People are telling these investors, they're telling these economic periodicals that they are feeling the burn right now. Your thoughts?
Let me start with a number of the things that are really remarkable about all of this. I'll begin with the last one you mentioned, the Venezuela story. That really has to be called a kind of remarkable extension of what Mr. Trump and his people have been doing. It's one thing to put a tariff on a country that you buy from and you want to protect your own producers at home by making it more costly to buy the alternative competing good produced abroad. Okay, we understand what that is. That's what a tariff is. That's why tariffs are imposed. But what the United States just did with Venezuela is different. It's not about a tariff on anything produced in Venezuela by Venezuelans when that stuff is bought by Americans here in the U.S. That would be a normal tariff. What the United States said was that they would impose a tariff on countries not about whether or not their goods come here and compete with our goods. No. If another country with whom we may not have any trade at all, and so, there's no issue, but if they do business with a third country, Venezuela in this case, if they buy oil and gas from Venezuela, that's key because that's a major product Venezuela has and upon which its economy depends. We are now operating what used to be called a secondary boycott. We are basically saying we will punish any country or any entity. We might sanction a corporation. You do business with someone we don't like, Venezuela's government, and we will punish you. This is the behavior. There's no way out of this. This is the behavior of somebody, the U.S., that wants to control world trade. Any one of the 180 countries in the world, and many of them are in fact doing it right now, buy oil and gas from Venezuela. Since they have choices, they're probably buying oil and gas from Venezuela because it's a good deal. Maybe they're near Venezuela and the shipping is less costly. Or maybe Venezuela sells oil and gas at a lower price. Normally, up until recently, the leaders of the United States would have insisted that free trade is what we believe in. Venezuela should be able to sell what it has to sell in the market at whatever price it negotiates with buyers. Buyers and sellers getting together, negotiating and coming upon an agreed price, or else not doing business. We've now given that up. We're giving it up everywhere. We can't make it in a free trade system. It's an irony people should understand, because for the last 40 to 50 years, the United States has been, the champion of global free trade. The country that most insists that the government shouldn't tell you what to do economically. It should be left to the market, that the market is what's efficient, that the market is what makes the best outcomes. Well, either we were lying then, or we've had an epiphany and dropped all of that. But here's my explanation. We are losing the competition in the world free market. If you pay close attention, for example, to the public statements of Xi Jinping in China and many others, they're the ones pushing free trade. The United States is backing away from free trade, and there should be no mystery as to why. The Chinese figured out how to do what the United States used to be the best at: produce high quality, low price. Well, the Chinese are now showing us that other people can do what the United States did, just like the United States showed the British 100 years ago that we could do more and better in this country than they could do there. Competition has winners and losers. And what winners tend to forget is that you are giving an incentive when you win for the loser you beat to now come back and beat you next time. It works that way in sports, and it works that way in economics too. And the United States is now behaving like the desperate loser economically, who has to try to control everything, because if they leave it to the free market, they're sunk. Let me give you the simplest example that makes it dramatic and touches on our government right now. Mr. Tesla's leadership, Mr. Musk of Tesla, enabled him to become, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, with 400 billion, give or take. Why? Because he produced something new, an electric vehicle. And he did it for a while, better and cheaper than anybody else. But he particularly did it first. Okay, if you have a market, which we do in the world, no country can control it because it's all the different countries in the world. The United States is trying to control things now, will not succeed at that. No one ever has. But in that world market, people went to work because Tesla was successful, because it made Mr. Musk rich. Others wanted in on that action. No surprise. Among the many who got in on it, there is a Chinese corporation. In China, there are, I believe, about 30 companies that make automobiles one way or another. But one of the biggest and most famous, it's called the BYD Corporation, which, if I'm properly informed, actually stands for the English words "Build Your Dream." The BYD Corporation went to work. And you know what? they produced a better electric vehicle at a lower price than the Tesla of Mr. Musk. So all around the world, particularly over the last 6 months, Mr. Musk is having more and more problems. The sales figures for Tesla are going down. And by the way, they are going down before he made his Nazi salute and all of that. That's made it worse, but he's losing, and he's losing in Europe, he's losing here in the United States, and he has fallen into second place in China, where the BYD corporation now has sold in the last year more cars than Mr. Musk has. He's a loser in the same competition where earlier he was a winner. Okay, that's the story of the United States. And the question now is, do you face that and come up with a plan, a program? How do we manage this? Or do you get desperate and try to control everything? And unfortunately, it looks like Mr. Trump is a partisan of control it. It won't work. The Venezuelans will get around this the way the Russians have gotten around the sanctions that were supposed to defeat them in Ukraine. The Iranians have gotten around the sanction that was supposed to extinguish them as a force. North Korea is the same. Come on. We should have learned. We've been having a total embargo of Cuba now for over half a century. It does not work. And you know what it does do? People in America need to understand. It means you enable the leaders of every country you treat that way to turn around to their own people and say, this is a time for you, the people, to support us, the leaders, as we struggle with the big, powerful United States that is taking it. You're solidifying the political power of the people you target. You know, when you shoot at something and the bullet bounces back and hits you in the nose, it's time to stop shooting.